Hello everyone, Douglas here, and welcome to my Doctor Who review, and today I will be reviewing the first two-part story, Aliens of London and World War III. This story is the third story to be written by the showrunner, Russell T. Davies, and when Russell was writing this, he was inspired by 1958's British sci-fi show, The Quatermass and the Pit. And this story is again directed by Keith Boak, who directed the first story, Rose. I remember when I first watched this story, I thought it was good. In part 1, called Aliens of London, our cold open scene begins with a recap from Rose. We are at the Power State, and we see the TARDIS lands, and we see the Ninth Doctor, played by Christopher Eccleston, and Rose, played by Billie Piper. And the Doctor is dropping Rose back at home, and we find out from the Doctor they have been gone for 12 hours. We see the Doctor notices a flyer, and the flyer has Rose's picture. We see Rose is back at her apartment, and we see Jackie, played by Camille Cordell, and she is surprised to see Rose. And Rose sees the flyers. We see the Doctor comes into the apartment, and we find out from the Doctor it's not 12 hours, it's 12 months. So it's been a year. So oops. I love that cold open scene. Our opening scene begins. We see a kid spray paints the TARDIS Bad Wolf, and it's time to get the Bad Wolf counter on. We see Jackie is upset that Rose ran off with the Doctor, and she was worried about her. The next time you are time traveling with someone, just walk away. I like the Doctor's line when he says, "I sort of employed Rose as my companion, and I don't think you are not helping, Doctor." We see the Doctor and Rose are on the rooftop, and they are talking, and Rose is going to have to tell her mom at some point. And we see a spaceship, and one of the iconic shots I like is when we see the spaceship crash into Big Ben and then the River Thames. We see the Doctor is watching the news, and this is the first time they used the news for this story. And when you look back on the war machines in the 10th Planet, they used the news. We are introduced to General Ashcraft, played by Rupert Vanzetti. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. And Dr. Tasiko Sato, and she would be a character on, you guessed it, Torchwood. And they are examining the alien body. We see Tasiko ask General Ashcraft about the Prime Minister, and he doesn't say anything, which is very suspicious. And we are at 10 Downing Street, and we find out on the news the Prime Minister disappeared. We are introduced to Joseph Green, played by David Verwey. We are introduced to Harriet Jones, played by Penelope Wilton. We find out that Joseph Green is the Prime Minister now. We are introduced to Margaret Blaine, played by Annette Badlin, and Oliver Charles, played by Eric Potts. We see that Joseph is given the emergency protocols. We see that there is more to these three characters that meets the eye. We are back at the Power Estate, and it's nighttime. And we see the Doctor gives Rose the TARDIS key. We see the Doctor walks to the TARDIS, and we see Ricky! I mean Mickey, played by Noah Clarke. And we see Mickey notices the Doctor, and he goes after him. We see the TARDIS takes off. We are back at 10 Downing Street, and we see Harriet tries to get into the cabinet room. And we see Joseph leaves, and we see Harriet goes into the cabinet room, and she notices the emergency protocols. We are back at the hospital, and Toshiko hears something from the morgue. We see the Doctor arrives at the hospital, and we see the Doctor goes to a room, and we see soldiers, and they point guns at the Doctor. We see Toshiko opens the morgue door, and she screams, and the Doctor and the soldiers run, And I like the scene when the Doctor takes command of the soldiers, and that is a good callback to 1970s Doctor Who. We see the Doctor hear something, and we see what the alien is, and it's a pig. We see the pig runs, and it gets shot. We see Harriet heals Joseph, and we see Harriet hides in a closet. One of the scenes I find annoying is this. We see General Ashcraft is with Joseph in his gain, and the fighting jokes really drag this down for me, and it's childish. And I'm like, okay, Russell, I get it. We find out from General Ashcraft that he can relieve him of command, and we find out that Joseph and his gain are the aliens because their foreheads have zippers. We see Harriet sees this, and she is scared, and General Ashcraft is killed. We find out from the Doctor that the UFO incident is faked. We see Mickey is reunited with Rose, and Mickey is not happy after the first story. We see Rose, Jackie, and Mickey are outside, and we see the TARDIS key glows, and we see the TARDIS lands. We see Jackie sees an alien helpline, and she calls it, and way to go, Jackie. One of the funny Mickey lines I like when we see Mickey is talking to Rose, and she asks him if he saw anyone else, and Mickey says, mainly 'cause everyone thinks I murdered you. We see the alien took over General Ashcraft's body. We see the Doctor, Rose, and Mickey step out the TARDIS, and we see helicopters and soldiers are surrounding the Doctor. I like the Doctor's line when he says, "Take me to your leader." We see the Doctor and Rose are getting escorted to Downing Street. We see a police officer at Rose's place, and the officer is an alien too. We see Rose is looking around, and we see Tony Blair! And no, that is not the real Tony Blair, that is an actor. And we discovered that he is dead. We find out from the Doctor that the meeting is a setup for the aliens to get power and all the alien experts to get killed. We see our look of the aliens, and they are the Slovene. We find out the ID cards are weapons, and they get electrocuted, and that is the end of part 1. In part 2, called World War III, we see the Doctor removes his ID card and puts it on the Slovene, and every Slovene gets electrocuted. We see Rose and Harriet are getting chased by a Slovene. We see the Doctor arrives with the police, and a good line from the Doctor when he says, "I think you'll find the Prime Minister is an alien in disguise." That's never gonna work, is it? And we see the Doctor getting chased by the police. And you can't accuse a politician of being an alien. Another good Doctor line when he says, "Well, now, you see, the thing is, if I was going to execute someone by backing them against a wall, between you and me, a little word of advice, don't stand them against the lift." And the Doctor goes into an elevator, and that was a great scene. We see Rose and Harriet are hiding, and Margaret is looking for them. We see the Doctor comes in and rescues both Rose and Harriet with a fire extinguisher. And we see the Doctor, Rose, and Harriet run to the cabinet room. And we find out from the Slovene that they are not species, they are family. One of the best scenes is that we see the Doctor seals the cabinet room, and that is cool. We find out from the Doctor that he needs Mickey's help. We hear Mickey's doorbell goes off, and it's the policeman. We find out the name of the Slovene home planet, and bear with me, and it's going to be long. Raxacola Falafatorius. We see the Slovene gets into Mickey's place, and they destroy it by throwing vinegar. We see Joseph is addressing the media, and he declares World War III, and they are going to make a profit out of it. I like the Doctor's line when he says, "Leave this planet or I'll stop you." and he is not taking any nonsense, and he would do anything to protect the Earth. I like how the Doctor admits that he can't guarantee Rose's safety. And this is an interesting point. When you look at the Daleks' master plan, we saw the deaths of Katarina and Sarah Kingdom, including Earthshock with Adric. And they weren't safe, and they died. So it does look like Rose could die. I like the Doctor's line when he says, "I could save the world, but lose you." We see the United Nations Security Council is voting. We see Mickey is selecting a missile, and Jackie says he could stop Mickey, but doesn't. And you can feel the stakes rising in this story. I like the Doctor's line when he says this, "Mickey the idiot, the world is in your hands." And we see Mickey fires the missile. We find out from the news the United Nations is going to release the codes. One of the best scenes is that we see the missile is coming and 10 Downing Street is destroyed. And the Doctor, Rose, and Harriet survived. We see the Doctor and Rose suggest that Harriet should run for Prime Minister. And we find out from the Doctor that she is going to be the Prime Minister in the future. We see Rose is packing her stuff, and Jackie tells her not to go. We see the Doctor offers Mickey to come along, but Mickey declines. We see Jackie and Mickey see the TARDIS take off, and that is the end. I will say, it is a good story. The second part is better than the first part, and the second part goes at a fast pace. I will say the Slitheen are interesting, but I am not a fan of them. This story does show that Mickey is not useless, and he gets an active role in this story. I will say Molly Gold's music is good in this story. The script by Russell T Davies is good, and the direction by Keith Boak is good, and I would give Aliens of London and World War III an 8 out of 10. So that is my review of Aliens of London and World War III. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you next time for my review of Dalek. That's right, the Daleks are back. I will see you next time.